pride ourselves with starting and finishing on time. I think people will come in as we go along. We do have a busy day in the city today. We have reciprocity, I'm told, over the weekend, today and tomorrow, and we have the Urur Palkat Kupam Vida also happening today, plus a host of other events that are happening. But we'll get started. It's going to be a beautiful conversation today. And welcome to the Wandering Artist. Those of you who are new to the Wandering Artist, this is the most happening performing arts space in Chennai, set up last year by Kaveri Puvanna, who's right there at the back, always very quiet, but our most willing, supportive host. And this beautiful facility has been offered by her to us on the second Saturday of every month, where we host the Artist Soul series. Now we bring artists into conversation here because we believe that for Vani and me, our higher purpose in life is to inspire people to be happy. We are continuing to go through a very difficult and cathartic phase in our life. We're dealing with a prolonged bankruptcy for about a decade now. And in this time we found that it's probably the most intelligent thing to do, which is to be useful to people than to only try to be successful. So success has been evading us in a worldly sense, but we've been putting our time to good use, and we curate 4 different events across the city, all of them aimed at inspiring happiness. The Artist Soul series is special because artists are people who have found what gives them joy and have had the courage to go after doing it. And they are, as Rumi, my favorite poet, says, they are operating from, these are my words, not Rumi's, they're operating from their core of sacredness. That is his word, divinity. He says when an artist follows what gives them joy, then something, these are his words, something opens their wings. Something makes their hurt and boredom disappear. And he says that someone fills the cup in front of them and they taste sacredness. So beautiful. So artists here, whoever has come into our session here, and whoever has had the willingness to come and share their journeys with us, have enriched us with their taste of sacredness. We've had Viku Vinayakaram open this series for us. Then we had P.C. Ramakrishna, the Dhananjayan couple. We had Nartaki Natraj, the transgender superstar dancer. We had Arundhati Subramaniam, the poet. We had Victor Paul Raj, the lighting expert. We had Srikumar Verma, the author. We had cartoonist and artist, painter, Keshav. So we've had and we had fashion designer, Rehane. So we've had a beautiful array of artists over the last year. And this season we opened in season 2, which is last month. We opened it with a tribute to Amitabh Bachchan, which I hosted here. We couldn't get Mr. Bachchan, so we got his devotee, that's me. And some of you were in the audience, and I'm sure you enjoyed that offering from a devotee to the Big B. This evening, we have a very, very special, acclaimed artist who I personally love a lot, which is Swarnamalya. Now, Swarnamalya is well known, but I'm going to tell you why we invited her to be in this conversation with me. When she's a dancer, she's a dance historian, she's a scholar, and she's an actor. That's the way the world knows her. She's very accomplished. But I know her as a little girl. My father-in-law, Venks, taught Vedic chanting on weekends and on holidays. And Swarna would always be at his chanting classes. And because some of them were hosted at home, we got to know Swarna. My children got to know Swarna. Even today, my son Ashirwad, when I spoke to him in San Francisco, he said, "Say hi to Swarnappa." So they all remember her as the Akka who used to come to learn Vedic chanting from Tata. That's how we know. So when my father-in-law, Venks, turned 80, Swarna reached out. She was keeping a very busy schedule. This was in 2011. She was keeping a very busy schedule. She couldn't be at his 80th birthday. But she took the time to record a video message to her chanting guru. And of course, he was also the principal of the school where she studied, so she had another reason to call him a guru. But she made the time, and it is such a very moving, powerful tribute, which brought tears in his eyes as he listened to it. The whole family gathered around and we listened to it. So, to me, Swarna is a very genuine person. And she's an artist, but as a human being, she's deeply compassionate and a very genuine person. And in the Artist Soul series, what we try to do is we explore the person's journey. We just don't look at the aura or the achievements alone. Of course, they matter. In a real world, all these things matter. But we go deeper there. That's why we call the series The Artist's Soul. Many of you know Swarna, but I will quickly sum it up. We are also recording this, so it will be useful on the video. She is a disciple of K.J. Sarasa, the legendary K.J. Sarasa. She's learned from K.J. Sarasa from the age of 3. She's been groomed and mentored by her for 28 years. And I'm sure she will talk about it. I think it's a great blessing to have your guru's grace, in the real world for a 28-year span, which is phenomenal. And then she did her sociology in her undergrad. She did a master's in Bharatanatyam. She did a PhD researching on dance in the Nayak era. Then she did her Fulbright fellowship. She has taught at the UCLA as a visiting faculty, and she has performed across the world. She's acted, and she's a very popular actor who made a debut in a Maniratnam film, Alai Payude. She did Mori, which is another very successful film, and she's a TV superstar even before TV superstars arrived. So she was the original TV superstar on Sun TV, where she anchored a youth show way back when she was just 15, around 15, 16. So it's been a fabulous journey for young Swarnamalya. She's still much younger than Vani, me, all of us here. So she's still younger, but it's been such a remarkable journey already, and I'm keen to explore that journey. She's won many awards, but I think from where I see it, if I were to spend time reading out all the awards and all the accolades that she's received, we'd probably take the whole evening. So I'll leave that out, but I will say the biggest award that life has given her is the blessing to just be herself. And she thoroughly enjoys it. Why she enjoys it, how she enjoys it, is what we will try and explore in this conversation. So please welcome Swarnamalya. Yeah. That's your mic there. So that was a brief introduction. I know I didn't do justice to everything that you've done, Swarnamalya, but we will, as we converse, bring out some of the other facets. How are you feeling? You feeling good being here?
Good evening, and this is working. Thank you so much for your very generous words. I'm overwhelmed.
They were very genuine. If they appear generous, it's fine, but I think they were very genuine. That's exactly the way I feel about you, and Vani feels about you, and We are so delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you so much.
So let's start the conversation. The way we will play this around is we will have, for the next, I'm timing it here, so for the next 50, 55, 60 minutes, we'll have the conversation between Swarna and me. And then we will play it back to the audience for your thoughts, your questions, and then we will close sharp at 8:30, as we always do with all events that we curate, right?
Excellent.
So this is not going to be exactly a biographical journey, though it might pass through that, through that framework. But I'm going to talk to her more about what she has learned on this journey. So my first question is on her dance itself as an art form. So very few people get an exposure to a guru such as Sarasama, and that too at an age of 3, when you're still making sense of the world. I think you're trying to understand your parents, you're trying to understand your home, and that's when you meet your guru. So I infer from whatever I've read that it is not as if you chose dance. It is that dance chose you and gave you the blessing of Sarsama, and it grew on you. So talk to us about this whole experience of being under her tutelage and how that actually made you the dancer that you are today.
Now looking back, I think I'd agree with you that perhaps dance chose me. But of course, as a 3-year-old, I hardly would have had agency to make any choice. But having said that, I think the only memories I have of that childhood of mine is my dance classes. Now that there's so many years past, when I look back, I can't remember anything else. I can remember a bit of my schooling and a little bit of my home, but I remember my dance classes vividly, and I remember the involvement of my parents, especially my mother, in encouraging me in that direction. Because every time, I don't remember making a conscious choice of wanting to take dance seriously. In fact, I keep asking myself that question. I keep asking myself why I chose dance. I mean, if I ever chose it at all. But I don't think that was ever a conscious moment. Because from where I see, my guru was in so many ways becoming such an integral part of my growing up. She had become such an influencer, just like my mother. And my mother was not exactly averse to my guru becoming almost sort of the first parent for me. I think that combination perhaps just pushed me in that direction. I didn't have another choice. So as a 3-year-old, I have no other memories except dance, learning dance, finishing school so that I can go back to dance class, finishing dance class, coming back home, quickly finishing homework, schoolwork, school, so that I can go back to dance class again. So dance and music and yoga and Vedic chanting, all of these occupied the better part of my time and life, and I'm reaping the benefits of those in a very personal way today. So that's the only memory I have. And so yes, dance, I think I can now, I can take a little pride in saying that perhaps it chose me. But I should thank my mother, because I don't know what, it was perhaps an unfulfilled dream, which is how for most parents it is, for most moms who bring their daughters to my school. I hear them often say, look, I wanted to become a dancer, but since I couldn't, for so many reasons, I want my daughter to. But that's a journey, that's the beginning. And then there's a journey. So how much a parent can pull through and how much a daughter can come along, I think that's where the story lies. So I thank you.
That's a nice way to start. Very lovely perspective you shared there. I want to delve in on that a little more. So let's move on. Let's say you are now closer to 10 years of age, okay, and you're beginning to make more informed choices in life, right? Many people have this tendency that because the parent influenced them, they take up something. Let's say a child plays with a keyboard, then the parent immediately concludes that this is what the child is meant to do. This is the calling, and they put the child in keyboard classes. But then over a period of time, the child probably is interested in cricket or wants to try other things. Did you try other things, and did you come back to dance? How did dance or Sarsama draw you back into their fold? Or was it a very organic thing that happened? It was not anything physical, it was not anything metaphysical, but it was just happening on its own.
I agree with you. I know children have a lot of distractions, but speaking for myself, like I said, I don't remember doing anything else. I don't remember ever being distracted. I didn't have other distractions. Going back from school at 3:30 and back as a 10-year-old, all I can remember is running to Manderley class from my home. Walking, she used to teach me the Kulaka Nadai, which is so special to the Varur Bani, and I used to practice that either on the rickshaw, if the rickshaw man to his dismay, or I'd walk all the way doing Kulaka Nadai to my school, dance school, and people would be staring at me. And I'd come back at 9:30 at night. Only if I had music class will I come back a little early. My parents never asked me to do homework. They never pressured me to be the first rank holder. Although at some level I was studying okay. Even if I did get the first rank, there was only there was a average reaction at home. As if I would say flunk an exam, which thankfully never happened too often. But so I don't remember having other distractions. I think Sarasama occupied my life. She had taken it over. She'd taken over so strongly that now looking back, I realize how amazing it is for a guru to just take your life over. If that is not guru-sishya relationship, I can't think of anything else that can be like that. That sort of completely taking charge of your life. Without spelling it out in so many words, she was never that kind of a person. She never ever sat us down, and today I do that all the time, asking people to take dance seriously. She never said any of those things. She couldn't, she had 300 students. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Even when you were with her?
Yeah, she was a superstar guru. And, all of us used to vie for her attention. And the only way you can get her attention is if you dance well. And she used to be so funny, and there were so many amazing moments in class. So everything I needed, I think, was there. It was sort of a packed, interactive space. So I didn't have any distractions. I never wanted to watch movies. I never wanted to play the keyboard. I didn't know these things existed. The only other things that I did were aiding my dance, which was learning music or learning Natyavangam or doing yoga. Momentarily, I wanted to learn Odissi, which I did for a few years, and even then, it was never to give one up and learn something else. It was only a tag along.
What life lessons did Sarsama imbue in you on her own, by just leading the way, by just being the person that she is? And here I'm asking you to be yourself now and look back, for us to get an idea of how a guru impacts a shishya in a long-term way.
A couple of years ago, just to quickly tell you why this is so important to me. A couple of years ago, I was in a conference, and there was a speaker ahead of me who spoke about how there's an obsession about the guru amidst the performing artists, particularly the classical. I don't like to call myself a classical dancer for the record, but just for now. So the classical artists especially are so guru bound. And it had me thinking, because here was a modern thought, and here was a contemporary thought of how one must step beyond the vision of a guru, perhaps. I did think for a moment, and then whatever I think again about my own guru and her journey in my life, her presence in my life, as cliche as it sounds, every aspect of my life is touched by her. And today, as and when there are new crises, there are new circumstances, I'm realizing where she features in those. She's no more. But now I feel her presence more than ever. Now, as in the last 10, 15 years. So as when I was growing up with her, I hardly realized what an impact she's having in my life. And the lessons I've taken from her are so many. Everything from the way one conducts oneself, the way we dress, for example, the way we talk. I think the most important lesson perhaps that I have taken from her is that she's a single, independent, feisty woman who was the head of a family of 7 women.
Wow.
But that never was what she wore on her sleeve. She never walked around saying, look, here I am taking the burden of my whole family. She did it with so much ease. Although sometimes we'd listen to her cribbing about it in a very funny way. But she never once, thought of herself as this, achiever, or, she never brought her problems to the fore to speak about it. And to me that quality is amazing, that strength. All you saw in her was her beautiful, like Jadipu and her Mukuti and Pattupodava and that amazing sense of humor. She'd have all of us rolling on the floor and laughing all the time. And behind that was this strength. And I think in not showing that strength, she was more strong. And that's something I consciously sometimes try to do.
Beautiful. It's amazing that you so vividly describe this person and the impact she had on you. And I think that brings us to a very important learning, that a true guru is one who does not prescribe, who does not instruct, who leaves things there for you to imbibe, for you to infer, and for you to reflect on. She's no longer there, but look at the reflection, it's so powerful. You are just truly blessed. So just as dance found you, the blessing of Sarsamma found you, right? And it's still there, and I'm sure in some way these waves will carry it back to her, this tribute that you just paid to her. Beautiful. Let's come to a more, so I just used the word tribute very spontaneously, but that prompts me to ask you a question, which is your actual tribute to her on the day of her passing. I read somewhere that you came back home and you danced. And you composed a song for her. So what made you do that? And in what was your thought process? Were you trying to deal with your own grief, or were you trying to think of it as a celebration? How did it happen? Because I think this way of offering a tribute to a guru is very unusual. It's very beautiful. So I just want to understand your thought process at that time.
You see, one of the most striking things about Sarsamma is, like I said, her never say die, sort of an attitude. I mean, she was such. I can just say, when her physiotherapist would come, she refused to see him in her nightie. She refused to come out and meet Professor C.V. Chandrasekhar sir, would come to pay his respects to her when she was sick without her diamond mukuti. That's her.
Okay.
Just to give you a picture of how impeccably she wanted to present herself. So in the last few months of her life, I had seen her suffer physically, although she was braving it. So to me, I finally found the human within this woman who was frail and who was ailing and who in many ways I hoped would have a peaceful end. And even at those moments, the interactions that I had with her were extremely, extremely precious, in the sense, I just to cheer her up. She wouldn't talk to anybody for days because she was upset that she was sick. So everybody called me and said, why don't you do something? So I went and I said, okay, I've composed a new jati, can I please tell you? So she just nodded her head, and I started reciting this jati. She heard it, and then she said, Romba nalla irukku, neeya panna. So, that brought her back to, life. So, moments like that, And and when I tried to speak to her about her family, especially her father and her early years, she stopped me right there and she said, I don't want to talk about these things. So, in many ways, she didn't want to revisit. She was on her journey out. And, she was sort of preparing herself for all of that. And she didn't want to go back and have these memories. But one of the things that always haunted me was how she of all the things, I mean, she's had so many awards and she's such an acclaimed guru, she's left such a legacy behind, but somehow she wanted the Padma Shri. And nobody ever thought of giving KJ Sarasa, Kalemamani KJ Sarasa her Padma Shri. But of course, we live in a land where MS Vishwanathan was also not given one, so I'm making my peace like that with it. You see, so when she passed away, I was upset that here was a woman who needed to be celebrated more. But in many ways she was celebrated, but in some, especially where she desired, perhaps a few things didn't happen. So when they took her away, and I came back home. I came back to my dance class. Actually, I didn't feel like going home, and I sat there by myself. And I knew that they were going to put her on that funeral pyre, and I didn't know what I could do. I was so helpless. I mean, she had given me so much in life, and I felt extremely helpless. So out of that helplessness, I said, okay, I'm going to give you a Padma Shri. I don't care whether this government or whoever is going to give you one. And you are to me, my mother and I, we always admire her beautiful complexion. She was sort of dusky, and she used to wear all these amazing colored clothing, and she was a fashion icon in her time. Even now I marvel at all that. So I put all of my vision of her, of how she was a people's person and how her students are her Padma Shri. So all of these ideas, all of these, unrequited desires that I wanted to do more for my guru. But then also that fulfillment that she had more than that. All of this sort of brought that, and she loved Shankarabharanam. So the last 10, 15 days of her life, I had played a lot of Shankarabharanam, sung a lot of Shankarabharanam for her. So I brought all of that together in a very, it wasn't thought of, I was just sitting by myself, and so I just sang the song. It was not composed. So I mean, I refrained from calling myself a composer, but I just recorded it because I wanted it to be an offering to her. So that's how that particular kriti happened in Shankarabharanam. For her, where in the last Sharanam, I just say, you are Padma Shri. It's in Sanskrit, so I say, you are Padma Shri. You're in the heart of the lotus of our heart. So in that sense.
Fantastic. So you actually, the song just came to you, and you ended it with that offering from you.
Shamale is how I began, because she's dark skinned. Shamale Sarasija Lochani, because she had beautiful eyes. Hasite, she was always the one who'd smile. Hasite, something else, I forget now, but yeah.
Okay, but that's how it happened. And this was in 2012, January.
January 2nd.
Thank you for reliving that time and sharing with us. So there's the Guru Sishya bond that has made Swarna the person that she is today. Do you want some more?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sorry, keep a glass, but the Guru Sishya bond that has made her the person that she is today, and her own tribute. On that note, let's move forward. Let's go back to your journey, and we talk a little bit about what a dancer, an artist who is actually a child of the art form, okay, has to undergo in the real world, which is you have to have an academic education. That's the way our system is structured. How did you manage it? Were you a good student? How did you balance time? How did you balance attention? And then you go on to do sociology in MOP Vaishnav. So what led to the choice of a degree in sociology for you? So talk a little bit about, so young people watching this video or listening here get an idea of the importance of having to do both. Or do you have a different point of view?
Yeah. I mean, education for me was always, it was not a choice. You see, for all of us, it's not a choice. Sometimes we wish it were, but it's not. But I think the way I chose education was a choice. The way I was allowed to look at it was the kind of freedom that I was offered by my parents at home. Having said that, I do think that whatever choices I've made, even in my academics, have somehow always been influenced again by my art. It's in a very organic way, I don't know how. So, but one of the things that I would say has been sort of key to my my not deviating from academics is finding all these amazing mentors. I cannot I know it sounds very cliche when I say guru, mentor, guru, but I cannot begin to tell you how important they are. We all know everything. When you read these motivational books, we always think we know everything. We've heard every one of these things before. But we need the right person at the right time to say the right thing. I think that's what mentorship is about. So it's not as if I did not know about sociology. It's not as if I was not a people's person, and it was not as if I didn't have the aptitude for it. But when I was thinking, I have to continue my dancing and I have to be more active, so maybe I'll take BA Literature, because all of my friends were also incidentally doing BA Literature in Etharaj College. Dr. Nirmala Prasad, my mother's friend, she said, what is wrong with you? You have aptitude for humanities. Why do you want to just go do something because everyone else is doing? I know this is a new field. Sociology in 1998 was absolutely new. People thought it was for all the failures. I think in many ways people still think that. They don't realize the importance of humanities enough. So she was the one who said, do it. Venkatachalam sir, in school, I was a good student, in the sense I was a good student who the professor or the teacher could rely on. I would never let them down by failing or all of that. But I was not a good student in terms of attendance. I always fell short because I was doing 10, 20 things at the same time. And my mother would always say, why do you want to be in that rat race of 10 standard, 12 standard? So go ahead, do everything, but make sure you study. And that's what Venkatachalam sir said too. Thanks to him, I had a hall ticket. People were refusing to give me a 10 standard hall ticket because I had a dance performance the previous day. He called me into his room and he said, do you think you can do it? I said, yeah. So I said, okay, take it, go. So those are the moments, those are the kinds of mentorships that I absolutely cherish. But for that moment, but for Nirmala Prasad, but for Venkatachalam sir, I think a lot of my dreams, a lot of my life, a life journey wouldn't have happened.
So give the full credit to your mentors.
And trusting parents, right, who wouldn't sit on your neck because if you get 30 or 60 or 80 marks in one exam, it doesn't mean you're supposed to get the same in the next. So allowing you a second chance, allowing you multiple chances, I think that's life, right? So they taught me very early that it's in my hands. I can improve, but even if I don't, then I still have another chance.
The point she makes about mentorship and the mentors coming in at the right time has got a lot to do with the inscrutable design, which is the student, when you're ready as a student, the teacher shall always appear. And I think the right people come into your life if you are tuned in to the universal energy. And I think her energy was phenomenally in sync with the art form of dance. And therefore, for the dance to happen, the other things had to happen. You cannot live in a world where your academic system is dysfunctional. You need both. So the mentors arrived at the right time, I would say that. But there were also great, leaps in two different directions. One was television and the other was films, which happened in your teenage. Early on in your teens, I realized that you anchored a very popular TV show, Ilamai Pudumai, for Sun TV. And you ran that show for 7 years, which was a record by itself. Anybody at that impressionable age with so much of fame, popularity, could have got waylaid and got distracted and flown away. Nothing wrong with that flowing away. You could have probably been the most well-known face on television. You're still a very leading television actor, but you could have been owning that medium. So the one part of the question is, how did you rein yourself in? Or was it again organic, or did you go with the flow? And then something magical happened, which many people in the industry would give an arm and a leg to happen, which is Mani sir called you, Mani Ratnam, and after watching the show and gave you Alai Payude. You don't get the lead role, but you get the lead role, heroine's sister role, and you still take it up. And one would have imagined that after Alai Payude, Swarnamalya is the reigning queen of Kollywood, or maybe in the next decade or so you would have made your name. But again, you don't do it. So talk a little bit about those two opportunities and how you kept the focus on dance, or how dance held you back, or did it happen that way?
Yeah. Well, actually, I was resisting everything else. So, contrary to being distracted by everything, I think I was very conscious not to get distracted. Or, I mean, not even the fear of distraction, it was just the obsession with dance. So, I had my eyes nowhere else. Right at this time, I also had a highbrow view that dancers and classical artists are some sort of pedestaled human beings, So I used to walk the earth thinking that they're all mere mortals and we are artists. So I remember, watching Tamil movies and coming out and saying, it's too much violence, it's too much this, too much that. I had all these, all these highbrow attitudes. And right about this time, there were all these ad filmmakers who'd come for performances, and they'd watch and they'd approach us. And then Bharati Raja sir, he was one of the first few people to insist that I must act. Then Mani sir's older brother, Charu Hasan uncle, he was a family friend and he had watched me perform. He called him and he asked me to act in something and I flat refused. And he said, look, mark my words, someday it's going to happen. So I think he almost cursed me. He said, it's going to happen, you refused, but it's going to happen. So I wasn't holding my breath though. So when Mani sir offered, and then Ilamai Pudumai happened because it was school holidays. So I had that extra time. And I had my dance classes going on, and my entire family had gone off for a holiday, for a yearly holiday, and I refused to go because I had dance class. And so I think around that time, because I had some free time, I started doing this just for fun, just because I had time. And before I knew, one was spiraling into the other, and I started enjoying it. That's when I realized I also have an interest. And because my grandfather was a playwright and a stage actor, and there's a lot of drama, cinema in my home. He was also a film producer. So I don't know why I developed this highbrow attitude. Nobody asked me to. Nobody in my home had it. So it was a typical teenage attitude I think I had. So this was like bringing me back to earth, because I suddenly realized I enjoyed it. So when I was doing this, and Ilamai Pudumai gave me the freedom to discover myself really. I had a funny side. I had tremendous digestion for bad jokes, which was what that whole thing was, BJs, right? So I enjoyed being funny and quirky in front of the camera, and suddenly overnight, this was all catapulting me to a different space. Suddenly I was a known face, and I was entering college, and people were looking at me with disdain. So the more disdain and the more rejection I had from my peers, the more I realized I was doing something meaningful. So in that sense, it was all happening together. And when Alaipaide was offered, I walked up to him and I said, look, I have my first year university exams. Will you allow me to attend? Because that's my caveat, if I have to act. He looked at me and he said, we're also people with some degree, so we know what because a couple of others were offered me big roles, like heroine roles in movies before that, big films, had told me to drop out. And they said, you want a degree, I'll buy it, 5,000 rupees, I'll give you can just hang it. I said, no, I want to study. They said, what's wrong with you? We're offering you a heroine role against such a big hero, this, that. I said, no, I want to study. I don't know why I always kept saying that. And Mani sir, until a very long time, because after that also I had been, of course I had refused to act in movies after that, because it's too much of my time. That was always my thing, because my time had to be devoted to my dancing, and then to my academics, and then to other things. So this gave me little time. So, but he would find me, in one way or the other, he made me do a television serial based out of Chitra Banerjee, Deva Karuni's novel. So, we were doing all that. So his thing was, you're always studying. Do you ever pass these exams? So I told him, I'm not doing the same thing, I'm doing different exams, by the way. So, in many ways it became a joke. But the more it was being made fun of, I think the more determination, because I felt like it became my identity to somehow keep studying all the time. I don't know what that is. But, so that's how Ilamai Pudumai and Alaipa. So through Alaipa, the PC gave me such a hard time. He wouldn't let me go from shooting spot. 10 o'clock exam, 9:45, he'd be putting a shot on my face. I'd have tears. And he'll say, he'll keep calling me Purni, which wasn't my name, so I wouldn't respond. And he'd get upset, and I'd get upset. But some 9:55, they'll let me, and I'll run with my makeup and my sari, that same whatever costume, to the exam hall, where my professors would just would just roll their eyes and say, really, you exam, college, why?
Wow.
But I sat there and I wrote that exam. I wouldn't be there to collect the answer papers. I wouldn't be there to attend the classes, but I studied on my own and I went for that exam. I wanted to have that college experience. I didn't want to do long distance. So, all these things. So I was negotiating through a lot, but in a very fun way. None of it was like thought through, and it wasn't like, an organized, systematic way, but it's just in a fun way.
Two very important learnings here. One is she uses the word obsession. She started by saying she was obsessed with dance. I would say obsession is a right word, but a more profound word is immersion. If you are immersed in something, then you may want to still try other things, but nothing can give you as much joy. And so dance did that to you. And the other learning is that when people looked at her in disdain, she actually, instead of feeling depressed or dejected about it, said, let them, perhaps I'm doing something meaningful, right? And I think that's a very important point to understand. It's as much true in the world in which you grew up, in the world in which we grew up, and in the world in which some of these young people are growing up. If you pay attention to what others have to say about you, you will stop growing. You have to do what gives you joy. And that, to that extent, it's always right to be selfish, because don't compromise with that part. And that's what we learn from your journey. So you kept yourself rooted to dance while trying the TV show and trying the acting part. You do talk a lot about the negotiations you had on the sets in order to write your exams. I'm going to come back to that a little later in the conversation when we talk about your second love, if I may say, which is education. We'll come to that. But I think everything takes a pause in your life with your marriage. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that phase. I think it was 2002, 2004, that time, when here's a great dancer, here's a great TV anchor, here is a great actor who makes a debut in a Mani Ratnam film, and then suddenly she gets married and she goes away to the US. I remember at our dinner table, we had this conversation with Appa, whom she calls Venkatachalam, we call him Venks, myself, Vani, and Appa telling us that she's so talented. She is, hopefully, she will continue using her talent wherever she goes. When we, heard about your migrating to the US. So, in what circumstances did you, at a personal level, accept to make that decision to marry? And then, very interestingly, in 2 years, the marriage breaks off and you come back to India. How did you take that decision to come back to India? You could have stayed there, you could have done something else. Many people, again, would give an arm and a leg to be in the US, to get an immigrant status in that country. But you come back to India by 2004, 2005. So these two decisions, one to marry, one to separate. And you were still young, you were early 20s, 21, 22, 23. Many people are still figuring out what to do with their life, and you were thrust in this situation. So how did you deal with that?
Actually speaking, I don't think I dealt with anything at all. I don't recall making any informed or conscious decisions. Like I said, I think I was very playful, and rightly so, because you're just 21 and so much has happened to you. The only conscious choices that you have made is to be truthful to the moment, in the sense that if you have to be on time to your class, you have to be on time for your shooting spot, you have to give your best, you have to wake up on time. So these immediate tasks were about as much decision making I had learned to do. It perhaps also had a little bit to do with the way I was brought up, right? I don't think my parents have spoken to me about the larger purposes of life, at least not at that time, because I think they were also figuring out a lot. Parenting is also new to parents,
right.
So it's not like as if they have prior experience. So I don't blame them or hold a grudge, but so they never thought it was important to talk to me about certain things. I mean, at least about life. So all these decisions happened, and sometimes most of them were being made for me, especially about marriage. I didn't have an opinion, and that's the problem. Because when you're 21 and you don't have an opinion, you listen to anything that's being said, especially if it's from your parents. And they didn't have a clue. So, so it was all, see, I think life happens. And it's taken me a good 15 years since to realize that it's after all life. And it's not everything is lost. You see? So when that happened, when they asked me to get married, to me, in my head, it was about finding a friend. It didn't matter whether, I mean, now to be politically incorrect, it didn't matter if it was a boy or a girl. You know, to me, I was 21 and I had so much of attention on me, media attention, because I was very popular. I mean, everything I was doing was being written about and noticed. And you know, we were still in the age of tabloids. You know, today Facebook has broken a lot of that magic down, but Facebook and other social media, but we were still in that, you know, era where people wanted to pry on your private life, and so it was tough already. And then there were all these judgments that was coming from school and college, and I had just finished college, and my dad and my mom thought of this brilliant idea. Why don't we find you a companion? I said, okay. So that's all. It was just a very innocent decision by everybody. Well meant. Right? And so moving to the US was not a choice, it just happened. And you know, we were saying, okay, we'll go and come back. So to me, giving up dance or giving up any of my other things was not something that I had spoken to anybody. It wasn't expected of me, was what I thought. Giving up other things might have been slightly, I mean, if it was still a social choice, I might have given it, but not dance. Because I didn't have another identity. And so when the roommate situation with a perfect stranger didn't work out for a 21-year-old, both of us, and he was also young, so both of us said, okay, you know, before it's too late, let's call it quits. So it was a very childish decision by a whole lot of adults, if I can say that. And we were the youngest of the adults, although we took the brunt of it. But it happened. But I don't think we should hold a grudge against anybody, because now I've realized that all of them were learning and they meant well, and you know, so so that marriage was not 2 years, it was just less than a year, and we came back. And I don't even think we thought it was important to give it a harder try. When it didn't happen, we just snapped and we just came. So that's how I came back. In my head, I was still dancing. In my head, I was still doing my things. My life hadn't changed. Only thing that was people were looking at me differently. Suddenly I was tagged as a divorcee, and I was tagged as, I was given all these extra judgments. That's when it hit me that something had happened to me. I didn't even realize that something had happened to me. Because when I met my mentors, they spoke to me like they've always spoken to me. Nothing had happened in my life. I was pushed down by perfect strangers, not by people I knew.
That's a very honest answer. That's such an honest answer, and so true. She's being so genuine to herself and to all of us in this conversation. Thank you, Swarnamalya, for being who you are. I want to pick up two very important points she made. One is that the truth of the moment. I would go to the set, I would go to my class, I would respond to my parents' decisions by being truthful in the moment. That's all that we can do in any context. I think when we say we take informed decisions, we're kidding ourselves. You know, we can only be true with the data that we have with us at that time. And yes, you are very right. Parenting is an ever-evolving learning process. I don't think there is a perfect parent out there, and I don't think there ever will be. We are all learning. And at different stages of the child's evolution, we are still learning. So again, parents, it's so generous of you to not hold a grudge against anybody, because everyone is making those decisions based on those moments, you know, how they're feeling about something. The other thing is that life just happens to you. You are so blessed again that it happened in a very kind of, you know, flowing manner. A decision was taken, a marriage happened, and then a decision was taken and the marriage was dissolved. So it happened without too much of acrimony, too much of, I mean, I'm sure there must have been some amount of stress involved. But if it had endured, then the world would have lost a dancer, you know, and you might have been trapped in something that you didn't believe in. So I think in a way, when you can only connect the dots backward. But I'm going to come to another phase which you touched upon in your previous answer, which is the phase about social judgment, social pronouncements. And I think for whatever reason it happened to you, and life happens to us in different ways for no reason. So I've learned not to judge anybody anymore. I used to be very judgmental, to be very honest. I would always look at the other person and believe that they're going through something which I thought was my view of them. But after the bankruptcy hit us, and after we realized that we are being subject to so much of judgment, we've learned the art of being non-judgmental. So, but then I can still relate to the pain of being judged. So around the time that you come back from the US and you were picking up the threads of your life and coming in your head, you said you were dancing. You were struck by a completely bizarre controversy where you are being talked about and ridiculed in public media. You're dealing with the stigma, quote unquote, the stigma of having broken off in a relationship. What does a 23-year-old do in this situation? What did Swarnamalya do in this situation? How did you bring about, first of all, how did you bring about anchoring within yourself? Did you feel pulled in all directions? So how did you find that peace within yourself? And then from there on, what was the resolution? Hey, am I going to go after those sharks and try and tell them, don't talk about me, don't talk about me, don't talk about me? Or am I going to invest myself in a process that's going to help me find joy? What was this? How did it happen? What were your support systems? How was family to you at that time? Can you talk a little bit?
23, I think right about the time you're talking about these things, this is probably when I think I actually woke up to the fact that I have to grow up, right? So much has already happened, good for the most part. I had acquired so much of goodwill and knowledge from my mentors who continued to be in my life. And I had gone through what from others I hear as one of the most catastrophic difficulties of anybody's life, which is a marriage and a divorce. But to me, that was not the hardest part. The hardest part was waking up one morning and realizing that it was big. It was a big deal, and like you rightly said, that connected me to so many other newer problems all of a sudden, and that's when I think I grew up. That's when I started consciously realizing that I have to take charge of my life. I mean, it is my life. After all, nobody is going to help in the sense that, I need to identify people. I need to know who is with me and who is not with me or who is against me. There are all kinds of people around you. So this gave me a tremendous opportunity to first identify myself and then learn to identify others. But then I also quickly realized around the same time that even if I identify people who are against me, there's not much I can do if they are present in my life. You see, if they're very close to me and if they're still against me in a very, in a certain way, I cannot do anything about it. So that helplessness initially drove me crazy. But then slowly I settled and I said, you know what, you cannot surround yourself with perfect people because probably I'm not that perfect with others, right? So in all this, if I just have to zero in, refract from all of the garbage that was going around. I mean, I don't even want to talk about the controversy for the simple reason that it's a controversy. And so, it's going to have two sides. Even if I explain myself, there's going to be another side. So I'll leave better judgment to people. But in all this, one of the greatest things I realized was that's when my mother was also growing up as a mother. She had finally realized that she needs to do some parenting. She was an amazing friend. But then she rose to this position of a mother and she said, pick up the pieces, go back, enroll yourself in an MBA program, go back, enroll yourself in a master's program. You're 23, you're not going to sit around moping. Do whatever, pick up your acting, pick up your, lots of times people thought I wanted to come back eagerly to cinema and television. yes, in a sense that it was coming back to life, because you were at the verge of losing your life. And then you come back to it because that's the only thing you've known to do. And then you go back to educating yourself. That empowered me. I used to have all of these things being said about me. My head of the department in the college would give me, like these cold stares. I'd have to go and, I had to go to the court to be a part of that, the case proceedings for my divorce. And then in between, I'd say this, in between my MBA exam in the morning and my afternoon university classes, I would do these things. I would go to the court, or I would face the media, or this changed my life. This changed everything for me. I was just not given the moment to sit and worry or to sit and cry. I did cry. I was through depression, but all of this through exams and through educating myself without realizing, it was like a child's play again. Before I knew, I had already acquired degrees, and that education, for whatever it is worth, it empowered me. It gave me stability, it gave me that anchor that you're talking about. I cannot thank my mother enough for doing that. I used to hate her. I used to yell at her for sending me to college when I was crying. But she said, go, just go. That's when I think she became a parent and I became an adult.
That's a very lovely way of putting it. The mother grows up from a friend to be a parent, which is leadership. Leadership is about taking the right decisions based on the evidence of the moment, seeing reality and mobilizing the appropriate response. Moping and mourning will not serve any purpose. Worrying will not serve any purpose. It's so beautiful. I think I'm picking up a parallel here, which is you grow up through your crisis. All of us are stronger today only because of what we've gone through, what we've been through. And when a crisis hits us, when judgment comes our way, we tend to, first resist it. But I think if you embrace it, if you pick up the threads and run with it, then it always makes you stronger, wiser, and very, very interestingly happier. This is what we have learned in about a decade now. And that brings me to Rumi, my favorite again. Rumi said, and I can see that in you, the way you said it, the wound is where the light enters. You become enlightened through your crisis. So your enlightenment, even if it's a very profound word, it's actually a very practical experience and expression, enlightenment. The way we see it is from the outside, when I see your journey, you come back very forcefully with two offerings to the world. One is your own production, NMNM, in which you have your own guru taking part in it. So you direct your guru, and it must have been a very interesting experience. You were doing education on the side, you were doing your academics on the side. That was amazing, but you did this phenomenal production based on the Silapadikaram. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that immersive experience. And then in a couple of years, you come with Mori. You get a break with Mori, and you come back with a superlative performance, critically acclaimed. And so you come from a very dark phase of your life into offering something, two very beautiful things to the universe. How did this happen, and what was your experience doing creating these two?
So, Nammai Marandare Na Marakamatum, which is what
I can never say it. It's a tongue twister. My Tamil is very bad, so I won't even attempt it. So I'm so sorry.
So, Nammai Marandare Na Marakamatum, the title is, loosely translated in English is I forget not even those who forget me. Right, so this profound words really changed the life of Madhavi, the pivotal character in Silapadikaram. So when I went for my master's degree in Bharatanatyam, the course was not offering me much in terms of the practical aspects, because I had already trained under Sarsaman. I was a full-fledged performer, but it had, again, I had another mentor, Shri T.S. Parthasarathy, who was the Music Academy Secretary, and he was like a pillar of strength behind me, 82-year-old. Everybody jokes, I always have all these old people as my friends, and my phone is so boring that I have doctor this and old man that and old woman this and so. But these are the people I love hanging out with. So he just packed my hand and said, okay, go study. That's all. That was his reaction to I've come back after a divorce. He said, go study. So that's it. And he is from the older world, so to speak, and like an orthodox Iyengar, whatever, right? So when he could react like that, I couldn't care less about the other reactions. So my focus was on learning, and Silappatikaram and Madhuri's role really like struck a chord in me. But honestly, I never thought of it as a situational title or anything, but people really read it like that. So when in 2005, right after all the, ruckus was sort of settling, when I had created, and NMNM was created through the ruckus. So because the creation took a year, there were so many layers. There was music, there was script writing, there was sets, and because I also had a little bit of a cinema background, I thought big, I wanted to expand beyond the stage. And then I approached my guru because I didn't even think it was going to be that one moment where she'd be documented, ever. So it didn't strike me like that. I just went and casually said, please can you be a part of this? I want you to play the guru. She jumped at it and she came in her finest best. And we did this shooting. So all of this was, and that's again when I for the first time realized what an impact it had on my life, because she never spoke about anything that had gone by. For her, who had seen so much of life, this was but another, like a small obstacle. So you've crossed it, chalo, it's okay. Because she was the happiest when I said I'm going to get married. And she was the happiest when I'd come back, So she had come to act with me, and she said, you have to direct me. And that's when I realized, oh, so she's happily passing that mantle over. And she started calling me Neenga Vanga in front of everybody. I cried and I said, why are you doing this? Are you upset with me? She said, no, you have become somebody of your own. So if I, who's so close to you, respect you, you're going to earn that respect from everybody else. They would think twice before they put you down, if at all. So think of it as my sort of giving you that due that is required. And so she came on stage and said the most generous things. Now looking back, it is all of that stitched that sort of sutured my broken heart and broken life in many ways. And then through NMNM, and to me NMNM was a production. So it came with all its baggage of commerce and sponsorship and invitations. And so when you're immersed in the mundane, sometimes you don't realize that you're doing something larger. So it's helpful and then it's not also. So through that, Mori happened. And in films, you're in an easier place as an actor because you don't have the onus of having to produce anything. You're just there in somebody else's space. And it was a laugh riot. So the film itself, the making of the film healed me. I saw deaf and mute people up close in front and learning their language. All of this, I think, had tempered me, had taught me that there's more beyond life, more to life than, depression. Because that is a phase that I was depressed, I must say. I mean, this is a very closed audience, I can tell, or wherever. The idea of life can be so burdensome for a 23-year-old when you're struck over and over again. You get up and you're struck again. Life didn't think of it itself to be so cruel, I suppose, but it just did happen. So I was very depressed, and I did have very strong phases of depression. But through all of that, I still made sure I studied. She made sure I studied. She made sure I danced. She made sure I acted. So, you get up in the morning, you face the world, you open the screens of your curtain, and you face the world. And that's where I saw Sarasamma in me. Because she, as a head of a 7-women family, you can imagine how loud that family at home would be. The class would be like one step away. Like there'd be fights between sisters. People would be flinging like ever silver plates at each other, and you can hear the clanging of that. And then she'll step out, she'll just make a little bun on her hair. Just that's it. And then no more talk about home. In the afternoon she'd say, and a coffee could. That's it. Her life would change. And she would be there in that classroom till 9:30 at night. So nobody knew how she resolved crisis except that she faced it head on. So I think all of that strength I had started discovering when I was doing all of these things, because I was dished out a lot of, but again, there are so many people who go through so much more, so I really have nothing to, but these are life lessons I think I have learned a little bit.
Beautiful. I'm glad you shared it. I think we are, on one side our crises make us stronger, but she used terms which are so powerful, that it helps you stitch back, sutured back your broken heart. And the suturing happens when you go about your life as if the crisis is part of your everyday work now.
So true.
We like to look at a crisis, a situation that we dislike, as having to be resolved to move forward. It is never a process like that. You have to live with the crisis and work your way step by step, 1 inch at a time, not knowing which pebble is going to trip you over next. But when you do that, over a period of time you heal, and I think I can feel that. And you're a stronger person today thanks to that experience. And thanks to that experience of having learned this important lesson that you can't wish your crisis away. It's there, it's going to stay, it'll go away when it must. And you got to keep going, you got to keep walking. Today, a gentleman cried out of today's program, a very famous actor himself, Kavithalaya Krishnan. He said, Avis, I would have loved to be there because I admire Swarnamalya for being a strong woman. And your strength comes from that experience, as we can see. Let's move on now. I want to talk about the second love of your life, which is education. Just so that the audience is in sync with this question, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. So she does the usual schooling, then she does sociology in college, and when she is in the US, in that 1 year, she does a postgraduate diploma in acting for the camera program. Then she comes back, she does an MA in Bharatanatyam. She does a Fulbright scholarship later on, 2014, that was more recent. But you do an MA and you go to Dr. Padma Subramaniam and you learn Karanas from her. You go to Sita Rama Sharma, Bhagavatulu Srita Rama Sharma, and you learn Natuvangam from him. You come to my father-in-law again and you learn Vedic chanting from him. You are continuously obsessed with educating yourself. How does this thirst for knowledge arise in you? And do you feel quenched now? Do you feel complete now? So talk a little bit about why education is so important to you.
Learning is so addictive. Because I don't want to like extricate myself and say I'm some sort of an intellectual being. I'm not. But to me, learning is addictive also because it has seen me through all of this, and it's a safe haven. It's your anchor. It's the one place. See, I think the idea of intellectualism itself is a surreality, where you can refract yourself from your difficulties and problems and crises, and momentarily suspend yourself in this world, where even your own problems can be intellectualized by you. What a privilege, right? I don't know if all crises can be dealt with like that. I still don't know. I still have some life to be led, and I don't want those kinds of crises, hopefully. But I think health and things like that, I think you cannot intellectualize because it's such a helpless space. But these kinds of problems where life and people are dishing out certain things to you that you find is unfair to yourself, those are that's where this education or whatever that you're doing, these activities of learning can sort of transport you to another space and even look at yourself in that sort of aerial view. So to me, learning is like that. Every time I go to a class, it's that 40 minutes or 1 hour or 2 hours of suspension. I only look at my teacher's face. I'm only listening to what he or she is talking. So learning a language or going back to Vedic chanting, and also I'm reliving those moments of my life which were so much better. Right, when I went to Venkatachalam sir and when we were chanting at the later stage, it was just about living my 12-year-old, 10-year-old life again for a few moments. And that's so important, right? Because we're all trying to touch base with our more innocent times. So, you're living that and learning, and that organically sort of helped me realize that it's addictive, so I'm not very proud of it sometimes, because sometimes I think I use it as an escape from life. I keep studying or I keep doing these things obsessively. I think there is something good out there. You told me some time ago that you see something good that's going to come. Let's hope.
Yes, I do feel. Because it's quite, you call it surreal. I'm saying it's it's definitely away from the normal.
Yeah.
That somebody does so many things while being active in public life. Now you can be a hermit and be locked up for the next 15 years and try many of these academic pursuits and then come back with a slew of degrees and hang them in your room and say, look at me. But you're also doing so much of creation on the other side. And so, in fact, I missed out a PhD. Now, many people will take eons to complete a PhD thesis, but you managed that too in this time frame of about 15 years. So that's where the question came from.
Yeah.
So you tend to devour knowledge. So do you feel quenched?
No, not at all. Like I said, because it's addictive. But I just want to add, although it's a space of surreality as I see, I think it's also that surreality that gives you a reality check. Because I feel that after every time I finish a course or every time I learn something, I have the opportunity to understand the real world slightly better. Otherwise, for an artist, for an actor, with that kind of life where you can so easily be cocooned in this sort of a psychophantic space, if I can call it, or sometimes even your own space, where you feel that self is so important. Facebook can do that very easily to all of us today, right? You feel so self-important, and you paint a picture of your life that is so beautiful and perfect that that's how you think it is, which is good in some ways, but it also can be so away from reality. So for me, all of this, going to a teacher, sitting with them, doing simpler things, very simple things, and them not being judgmental of me and just teaching me, becoming this medium for me was just a phenomenal experience. By itself, it was healing me. I still yearn. Every time a guru of mine or a mentor of mine passes away, I feel like a part of me is being chipped because I don't have that space to go back and reconnect. It's so important, it's so vital to have these people, because they hold you together. They're like the pieces of the puzzle.
Now I understand why you took that time to create that CD for my father-in-law and send it to us. I can connect it back now, So how much do you value their inputs in your life? Amazing.
It's such a selfish thing. For me, they're all there in my life for my selfish reason. I have no qualms. I'm not a higher person or anything. I'm just a very normal person. But the fact that they mean so much to me is because they put me together. Every time one of them is gone, I feel like, but then they find another organic, amazing way to somehow be present in your life, even after passing away.
I'm watching the time. We're almost in time for the audience interaction, but I have one last question before I take it to the audience. So let's talk a little bit about Rangamandira, where typically one would expect a dancer to have a dance school, which you have in Rangamandira, but Rangamandira is a lot more than that. Especially in the last few years, you have done productions and you have initiated activities which have taken Rangamandira out of the context of being a dance school alone. You're doing a lot of work across cultures and across faiths. What's driving your current body of work with Rangamandira now?
See, one of the things that I have over these years, if anything I cherish out of my life, is the ability that people around me, like my mentors and my education and my life experiences, has given me is the ability to be empathetic. Because I think what stands us apart as better people, if at all there is something like that, is that we can empathize. And I find that lacking most of the time in artists because we are in a very competitive space, especially in artists. So when Rangamandira started taking a better shape, and when I realized that I was mentoring young people, indirectly. So it was time for me to put all of these mentors in one space and give everything that Venkatachalam sir or this person and that person give. But not in terms of thirsting all that I learned on these kids, because they don't have to learn at Vedic chanting if they don't want to, because it's a freedom of choice. But the lesson to be empathetic, to be generous, to allow another person to grow along with you. These are values I think that are so important. It's more important than religion, it's more important than faith, it's more important than success and money, to me. right? So I discuss it with them. I ask them, do you want to be empathetic? I mean, it's okay if you want to be not empathetic, because that too is my empathy, right? So, but then we have these discussions with young people, with 14, 15, 20-year-olds, and we constantly discourse, and that's why the platform is larger. We look at young learners, you know, who want to earn while they learn. We look at dance as an inclusive medium where we use art to bring other art forms and other artists. We don't isolate and pedestal ourselves anymore as classical artists or as you know, superior beings. We try and break all of this down as much as we can, and we keep trying at it. And that's how this whole interfaith, interreligious, intra-religious, whatever that we want to call it, all of these things are germinations from that. And my PhD thesis and from the attic, which was an extension of that, was sort of also a space from where I personally, but again, Rangamandra is not Swarnamalya. That I'm also very clear about, because there are so many mentors and so many of their imageries there, and these young people also bring their own. I'm not a physics student, but I have young girls who are doing masters in physics. How do I accommodate their intellect? I can't thrust my idea of Aryabhatta or X or Y on them. I can learn from them. I can interact with them, but that's about it. So it's a knowledge sharing space. It's all of that. And more than anything else, it's a very inclusive space. And to me, that is the most proudest achievement, if any, that I can talk about. All my students, the entire space is very inclusive. We include everything, all genres of art, all kinds of people, and everything really, all faiths, everything.
So in a way, are you democratizing dance? Is that happening very intuitively?
Yes and no. I am democratizing. I mean, I don't know if I'm doing it, but I think art is pretty democratic in the sense that everybody can dance and anybody can dance, but not everybody and anybody can dance. I don't know if that makes sense. How do you empower them to reach out to this democracy that's already entitled to them? That's what I think we do. We don't democratize essentially, but we allow them to experience that democracy. It's part of their rights and entitlements of every living being. So you don't have to be a certain class, a certain type, a certain faith, a certain anything to be able to want to engage with art. Even if you hate it, engage with us is what we are saying. Right? So to me, all of that is really what my life has now become, because, and I'm learning every day. And I'm trying as much as possible not to put my ideas on the institution or on the establishment. And we're also trying to de-establish the whole thing, because we don't want systems that, again, impede. So this inclusivity is something very dear to me.
What she said just now may appear to be a very intellectual view of what can be done with the art form, but it's actually the most fundamental thing that needs to be done. Instead of just preserving it as the prevail of a select few, making it more accessible, which is where I brought in the word democracy, but you're refusing to pick up that for yourself, which is very genuine again, that you feel the democracy already exists, but just make people experience it. I think that's what you're doing, which to me is a sign of higher purpose. We all evolve into a higher purpose. A higher purpose finds us. So if art found you, if dance found you, if Sarasama's blessing found you, now you're coming to a point in your life which is a natural evolution, which is that what do you wake up in the morning for? It's something more than just creating productions, something more than just performing, but making the entire space a lot more inclusive. That's what you talked about just now. Fantastic. We've had a great conversation, and we'll go to the audience now for your questions. Please keep your questions brief, and I'm timing it over here, so when I do say time is up, please respect me and my choice, and we'll go to Swarnamalya offline with your questions after the event if there are still questions. Yes, the first question, please.
Hi, nice seeing you here. And as you told, I remember you from Ilavai Pudavai. I like the funny questions and very jovial manner. So I was actually, feeling good about how you coped up with your crisis through art. So in a similar manner, I had written a book about art therapy, but my way of art is about the actual drawing as a childhood hobby. And I'm a software person, so I thought during my time of stress and my recent very complicated surgery, art again actually helped me, though I was out of touch for many years. So I just thought that art can be a therapy, because I see so many people and kids suffering. So I actually wrote a book where art can be used as a therapy for the kids who are suffering more in this generation, and also for people like me and the elderly. And I do conduct art workshop. So I was really very surprised that you have been very truthful about the way how you coped up with crisis. And I do agree that education is really very important. We are in a materialistic world. I still don't agree on the materialistic side. Education is still very important to empower us, and also they help us during the crisis. So I felt there's a similar purpose. So I've been doing it for 3 years. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that perspective. Question, please. Yeah.
Thanks so much for that really lovely conversation. Thanks to the two of you. I have 2 quick questions. What does it mean to you to dance and teach Sadar today, A? And B, what impelled you to learn Odissi? What was that experience like?
To me, the democratizing of the art, as I said, this inclusivity that I speak about, also extends to the idea that we have to include the hereditary artists. I mean, because if you are taking the art from them, and if you've democratized this for yourself, you are extending the democracy. You're making meaning of it only if you allow them to have the agency that they had. I mean, I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. We can't allow anybody. So allowing by itself is a sort of a very entitled word. I don't want to say that. So to coexist, right? So, and to learn from their experiences, to embody, to re-embody that art. Because I'm not a Devadasi body, I'm not a Devadasi mind, but I've learned from one, I've learned from several, and I owe it to them. And the art itself is contextualized on their bodies and voices. So how do you cut away those strings, and how do you make a normative choice that you expect to have a life of its own? So for me, taking back Bharatanatyam to Sadar is a choice from moving from a normative practice to what I call as a vital practice. Sadar is vitality, it's life itself. You cannot extricate it as a 15-20 minute 1 hour performance. It's not a hobby, it's not a passion, it's not a profession, it's life. So to me, going back there was the right way of reconnecting with my own practice and my teaching. The second question, Odissi. Odissi was again very organic. I wanted to learn Odissi. I was very afraid of asking my guru because she would say, "Oh, style ella maridum." So for a few months I did it in secrecy. Then I couldn't anymore, so I had to break it to her, and she was visibly upset. And everybody, the first time you make a mistake, so that was, yeah. But yes, so learning another art form, I want to learn from Birju Maharajji. I'm planning to do that. So not to become an Odissi dancer or a Kathak. It's important to have that intersectionality, because that's when again, you include. Your body needs to include everything. So it was a, thing like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's the last question for the evening.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, Ramesh, I didn't notice it.
I raised my hand.
Sorry, but we'll skip that. We'll go to Geeta's question, and then you can take your question offline with her. Okay, please.
You mentioned about the importance of humanities and how you chose sociology. Now, as a parent, I've gone through the same experience with my daughter. In class 11 decided she would do sociology, and she would do it only from MOP. So as somebody who's so fascinated, so interested in the field of education, may I know as to whether you are doing something to promote to parents especially, and to children also in the final years of school, the importance of humanities, especially when we talk so much about the right brain, the importance of right brain now, and not just the left brain?
Absolutely. I think I think my entire, the trajectory of my academic engagement has been deeply, I think, influenced by my tryst with sociology. And I don't, and you know, like you say, you know, you cannot, nothing goes to the back burner. So once you're a student of sociology, if you understood anthropology, I've used all of that in my later creations. For example, when I had to do an ethnographic study as part of my PhD dissertation, I had the apparatus to do that because I had a background in sociology. People take you more seriously elsewhere in the world when you have a humanities background. But having said that, you know, I have a lot of young people always with this 10th standard, 12th standard crisis, every day literally. So it's almost as if I should start putting that as a sort of a, you know, thing on my prospectus, because all parents, all students go through this crisis. Parents go through that crisis more. So I audit them. I in fact prepare the student much in advance. From class 8, 7, I tell them, and for me, I think for them, the good thing is they see me as a living example of how one need not give one up to do another. So I never gave up my studies, I never let any of these things affect. So, and also studying humanities has never stopped me from achieving, you know, higher goals. For example, to go on a Fulbright fellowship, to apply for a Fulbright fellowship, not a scholarship but a fellowship, and to be invited to teach in UCLA. One would think that one had to be either in math or physics or science or some such important field, but you can go to World Arts, Cultures, Dance, and you can still be noticed as a very prominent scholar who's visiting this university. So everything is possible. And young people have, nobody wants to always do a BCom. I know so many young girls who cry to me saying, please can you speak to my parents? So it's important that when I speak, I think I also come with a certain authority, because the parents don't see a college dropout. They see somebody who's done a PhD. Although sometimes they might think I bought it. Sometimes people think that, you know, because they think it's an honorary doctorate. So I tell them, no, please, here's my certificate. So it wasn't bought, it was not 5,000 rupees. So yes, but I do have these conversations on an everyday basis. It's very important.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Very beautiful answer. Good question, Geeta. Thank you. Sorry, Ramesh. I could not see your hand go up. Wonderful conversation we had. I'm going to invite Kaveri to come forward now, and we got a little ceremony before we close.
I just want to say, I want to thank you
for
please. Making it so comfortable for me to speak up. I don't think I've ever done this before, so thank you so much for being so generous. So, you know, you brought a lot of insight into my life. Thank you so much. It's been a moment of introspection. Thank you.
I think we worked well with the question and the answer and the time.
Thank you.
When I come here and whenever I curate a program, Vani and I go through a lot of discussion in terms of choosing the guest, all right, but when we actually get here, I'm just a student. I'm just a seeker myself. And I always find that attitude brings the best stories out. And today we had a phenomenal sharing from you, which enriched all our lives, truly. And if it made you introspect, all the better, all the better.
And thank you for this lovely space. I think it's a great space. We need more of these.
So I'm going to do my customary wrap at the end of this little ceremony that we'll have with Swarnamalya. So I'm going to step down and invite Kaveri, please come forward. So Swarna, we have you a little something that will go on the wall of fame, which has been created with your picture by Kaveri. So you need to autograph this.
I like how you've kept the antique look on
Yes.
I'm just holding it up. It's Kaveri's work.
So long name, I don't want to shadow the photo.
Yeah, the date also.
Okay. Today is
10th February. Thank you. That's fantastic. So that is what she's autographed. This will go up in Kaveri's office for the moment. But she's thinking of a wall of fame where all our artists' pictures go up there, autographed by them. So we'll put it up here for people to see. And we have this little hamper for you from Wandering Artist. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to take it away, and if you could just come back there, we'll do a quick wrap and we'll close the evening. So my takeaway, listening to Swarnamalya and her journey. We could have covered a lot more. In fact, I really did want to go deeper into the Devadasi research that you did and the experience you had and what your takeaways, but we'll keep it for maybe round 2. A body of work like yours requires another longer conversation with you. But today, what I go back tonight with is a great sense of pride at having interacted with a lady who's followed what she believes in. Dance was swimming in my head, or some such thing she said, where she has completely offered herself to the art form and has allowed the art form to take her along the way. That is what amazes me. And I take great pride in having known you, as a young student and then now as an accomplished artist, and I'm saying the best is still to come. And that is why I think Rumi said these lines, which are very powerful. It is only from the heart that you can touch the sky. And you are a person that only operates from there. You don't operate from here. You operate only from here. That's been the journey that you've had. So only from the heart you touch the sky. Ladies and gentlemen, give it away for Swarnamalya.